All right, perfect. Pull this up. All right, so I'm Matthew Yarger. I'm from the IOTA Foundation, along with David and Dom, who's also on the line. I am the public sector product owner for North America, so I'm kind of managing our expansion, outreach, and operations in North America, starting just recently. Going into the foundation, we're a global team, we're a nonprofit registered in Berlin. We're pretty decentralized with 90 plus employees in more than 15 countries, with our main goal to research, develop, and grow real world market adoption of the IOTA Tangle and accelerate our ecosystem. Some of the aspects about our technology is we're an open source permissionless DLT targeted for the Internet of Everything. We're highly scalable because we're not based on traditional blockchain architectures or methodologies. We use a DAG construct, which basically means to put any data onto our ledger, you have to approve 2 other transactions beforehand. This allows us to scale very, very well over larger networks. It enables us to do a zero fee transaction mechanism. It's designed in a way that's very low resource requirements. For example, our new node came out, and our new node update came out 1.6.1. We're working on it, and some of the tests have shown that it requires less than 2 gigs of RAM to run a full node, which is pretty impressive in the blockchain space. We can enable secure data transfers with MAM and multiple different encryption mechanisms, asymmetrically or symmetrically, or even just like basic password enabled encryption mechanisms as well. You can do offline transactions through private tangles. So the tangle is what we call our distributed ledger, but it enables offline transactions, and that means you can work in areas with low infrastructure capabilities, low power capabilities, and low bandwidth connection capabilities, to where a private tangle gets established and then reconnects with the main tangle to re-verify and validate everything that happened while it was offline. And we also have some quantum resistance and resiliency mechanisms implemented with winternets and a few other things that we're researching and incorporating different mechanisms. We're a global cross-industry.
Just one quick question. Is the presentation stuck? Because I don't see you changing any slides, just making sure.
No, I'm still on the first about IOTA slide.
Oh, okay, good.
Yeah, so lots of data, try to keep the slides minimum. We're a global cross-industry co-creation ecosystem, so we're open source in almost all of our technology, and our modules and our libraries that we establish are completely open source and available to anybody. We've submitted through bug programs and things of that nature. So we place security very paramount in our design, and then we establish blueprints and references for use cases to help our community and enterprises and governments and other organizations build what we're doing into what they need it for. The next one. Did you see that transition, David?
No.
Oh, you didn't see a change?
Did anyone else?
Here, let me do.
No,
I don't. Yeah.
Let me reshare. Maybe I'm sharing the wrong one. So share. There we go. That's why. Is that better?
yes,
Right.
we can see that.
Sorry about that. It did not transfer when I hit present. So that was the last slide I went over, kind of covering all the pieces that establish the foundation and our capabilities, just for you to look back over a little bit. And then targeting more on smart cities. Smart cities is the fastest growing innovation area in our ecosystem. And almost everything that we do and foster is implemented in a smart city type of hierarchy. This is our smart city executive summary, if you will. The world is becoming more and more urbanized. By 2040, 65% of the world's population will be living in cities. 1.3 million people move into cities every day. Ubiquitous connectivity, big data, and analytics are enabling smart city initiatives all over the world. IoT machine-to-machine platforms will reduce the time, cost, and risk to connect multiple systems in a city, improving infrastructure, creating more efficient and cost-effective municipal services, and enhancing public transportation while reducing congestion and keeping citizens safe and more engaged in the community. So a lot of what we do is opening up new IoT and machine-to-machine innovation. We look at machine-to-machine as establishing an economy of things, enabling mechanisms for devices to trade resources amongst each other with peer-to-peer IoT data marketplaces, or directly peer-to-peer using flash channels and some of the other technologies we have. We have a smart sharing economy mindset to where if I have personal vehicles or devices, I can actually enable other people to use those as long as there's a electronic capability and integrated into them, or you can lease drones for deliveries or different things like that, enabling like a community-centric and citizen-centric kind of mindset. We're starting to target and move more towards a citizen-centric innovation as we've kind of developed these technologies. I'm particularly on the social impact team, so I'm focused on the impact that it has on people, and the citizens of the city is a very big piece of that. So part of what that is doing is allowing citizens to control and share their own personal data and use that data securely and privately, while also enabling them to harness that data and profit off of it or create mechanisms for value transfer. So we're focusing on enabling smart city services. This incorporates the enabling technologies such as big data analytics, mobility, social technologies, and cloud, and prior legacy technologies that are out there. This can feed into business imperatives such as open data and transparency, increasing productivity, or allowing for better citizen services, which then can foster value generation, such as citizen and stakeholder engagement, cost avoidance, and competitive advantages, which can then feed into city services, which allow for like collaboration as a whole among the city and can feed those smart city goals. These are our principles of an IOTA-enabled smart city. To enable a presence of information and communication technologies and critical infrastructure components and services, which can be accessed through IOTA secure storage in a decentralized ledger, to incorporate a wide range of devices interconnected on a single network and used for transmitting personal, financial, and business data, perpetually moving freely, which is achievable with the IOTA data marketplace concept using MAM to enable the storage, exchange, and trade of data securely, to create an ensured system of smartly coordinated devices, whether those be public transportation, traffic lights, optimized use of electricity and water, or anything else when it comes to smart cities and government oversight or enabling infrastructure. This will result in reduction of acute global problems that we are facing today and can be done with the IOTA Tangle for opening up silos of data for community-driven ecosystem. We want to foster a growing presence of public participation in the city government, enabling public power. This can be done through citizen sovereignty, driving data ownership and curation via data marketplaces and public infrastructure connections. And we want to facilitate the growing importance and value of local economies run by local communities, contributing to local priorities. So all of this kind of starts with the community, and if you're not engaging the community behind a smart city and you're not engaging the citizens, then a lot of what you're doing isn't going to have the scope that it could. So it needs to have a very holistic overview of how to come down to the citizen-centric mindset and enable people to fluidly and as little friction as possible cooperate and integrate with their city. And speaking to the citizen-centric entry points, some of the things we're working on are self-sovereign digital identity, which can enable personal data management and can be used to do cross-border verifiable claims. So for instance, say you lose your wallet, and that means you lost your license, and you were also carrying your social security card on you, and your passport was stolen. So currently, in the US specifically, we have to go through with our birth certificate and request a new social security card. Once that comes in 7 days later, you go to the DMV, you wait in a 3-hour-long line, you get a new driver's license. And then once that happens, you can go back through and get a new copy of your passport. And this can take weeks and sometimes months. It's very cumbersome, it's very time intensive. But switching this into a digital platform enables you to, one, not have your identity and your information stolen as easily, and two, access these systems and go through these processes in a much quicker, more efficient manner, which can then save costs for the city, save costs for the corporations and entities involved with the city in these processes, and really drastically affect budgets as well. And that can also then feed into the data marketplace platforms, where a citizen can take their data and put it out for a fee on a data marketplace, so they can actually make a profit off of their own data instead of allowing major corporations to profit off their data without their understanding. We've done a proof of concept of a data marketplace platform with over 80 participants across industries and regions. We've connected sensors, we've connected gateways, we've connected vehicles. There's BMWs and Teslas that are on the grid that are allowing you to access the data that comes from their vehicle, as well as electrical systems and things of that nature, that you can then use, take the data, use it for research, or use it to make data-driven decisions as an organization or a smart city or an enterprise client, or multiple different use cases. And this can then go into creating mobility as a service. So in urban areas, a lot of people don't have vehicles, but still using mobility can be cumbersome, whether the infrastructure isn't up to date, so the subway systems aren't there, Uber isn't allowed in their city, things of that nature. But by incorporating some of these security mechanisms and DLT aspects of the Tangle and digital identities, you can securely transition your data between peer rented vehicles and platforms in a way that protects your identity, is custom tailored towards you, and can enable the city as a whole to respond to your needs more accurately and more effectively. Some of the proof of concepts we've had in mobility as well are over-the-air secure software updates. We went through this with Volkswagen for fleet management security, but the thing about this is it establishes a pattern, and this pattern can be moved into public sector to where a city can update the autonomous vehicle system software on their transportation fleet, whether that be buses or trains or any other kind of infrastructure devices where that pattern can apply. So you can take that pattern that's been implemented and shown to be secure and fluid and seamless and offer a lot of new use cases, and use it in a bunch of other ways to where it kind of overlays in really interesting, unique manners. We also have seen some smart charging infrastructure proof of concepts. So what this is one of our partnering organizations, ELAD Now. They took a little Tesla that you can see up there in the right corner, and they implemented a IOTA data wallet onto it, or a token wallet, excuse me. And then they also implemented a wallet onto the charging station. So when they plugged up their mini Tesla to the smart charging station, the payment stream of tokens from the vehicle was going to the smart charging station instead of having to pay in bulk at the end of it. So effectively they could plug and unplug at will, charge as they needed to, or even share charge. So if you have a vehicle that's fully charged and you're not going to be using it, you can plug it up to a smart charging station and use that vehicle to actually store energy and transfer energy to the smart charging station, which can then balance an electrical grid. And that's something that's becoming more and more prevalent with the advent and increase in use of electric vehicles and other electric platforms. The city grids haven't planned accordingly, and it's hard for them to react in a way to where they can balance their grid. It's creating a lot of taxation on the system, but you can actually use connected and disconnected systems to balance these with tokenization aspects and security aspects to store and offload extra power or move power to hubs or localities that have a higher power demand as well. Going into this as well is our involvement in the City Exchange. This is a large collaboration project throughout Europe. We're working towards the EU Horizon 2020 goals. We are partnered with 7 European smart cities with over 10 test beds, doing smart decentralized energy marketplaces. There are also 32 other partners, including authorities, businesses, and academics that are involved. And we have a 20 million euro grant that is fostering the research and development of these technologies. A lot of this is going into testing a lot of these assumptions or leap of faith assumptions, if you will, that are going into smart cities to actually see the functionality and the use case and establish these feedback loops so that we can then take that feedback and foster development internally at the foundation more. So all of this is kind of culminating into what we see as the need for a global smart city alliance. So I am located in Austin, and we have recently signed an MOU and done some documentation and planning with the city of Austin, and specifically Austin Smart Mobility, to establish Austin as a test bed for IOTA. We're working on some proposal outlines for some pilots that we want to scope over the next year, which look to be very exciting and interesting. Along with that, we also have digital identity in use with the Taiwanese government for the city of Taipei, establishing Taipei as a leading smart city in Southeast Asia. That is also proliferating into another collaboration called GoSmart, which is the global order of smart cities, I believe, which is something that we're starting to integrate into as well. That consists of over 150 different cities, and we're speaking with them about how they can integrate IOTA into some of these smart city concepts that we're establishing. But taking that with the City Exchange Alliance that we built up, Austin and some of the other US cities that we're starting to speak with, and then of course this amazing group of individuals and organizations that we're here with today, it really shows that there's a precedence and a collaborative mindset behind smart cities and making the change for good for the people and for the organizations, and establishing some of these new business precedents that are going to become available throughout this process. So yeah, I think that about wraps it up though. So eventually we would like to transition this on to a global smart city alliance and becoming more and more of a focus, I believe, internally. Yeah, David, Dom, if you have anything to add, please do. If not, that's all I have, and I'm open for any questions.
This was great, Matthew. Thank you. So what is it that you actually do offer? Is it a framework and a series of blocks, or is it an integrated solution? How do you engage with groups that are doing things like developing that Tesla or the charger? What's your approach?
Yeah, so I can jump in here. So the IOTA Foundation, as Matthew already mentioned, is a nonprofit foundation, and our mandate is to develop this underlying protocol that can be used in smart city, as Matthew just explained. So our goal is to bring entities together, just like we're doing here, together with you, and essentially build things for cities that can be translated over to other cities, because we want to establish a standard. So that's why we're already collaborating with the Eclipse Foundation and the Object Management Group to really have this streamlined process of open sourcing software and standardizing so it can be developed and moved from city to city to city. So the best way just to think of IOTA is to think of kind of the TCP IP for the web. That's kind of what we want to develop with the IOTA protocol for smart cities.
And to expel on that a little bit, basically what we have is an open source software suite, so where you can take a very small node and you can integrate that on multiple different hardware systems, whether it be a server, a router, an IoT gateway, a personal computer, a smartphone, and even integrating seed creation and management on micro devices, so IoT sensors, which is where part of the IOTA name comes from. So the scalability aspect of integrating into multiple different hardware solutions and connecting them in a way to where they can share data and be collaborative, enable people and organizations to then consume that data and make data-driven decisions is the full scope of what we're creating.
So if folks on the phone wanted to, you know, get more familiar with this and play with it, is it in a form in which the modules can be accessed and played with? And are there examples? Are there any tutorials or anything that people could sort of use to start to get familiar with what you've got here?
Yeah, so we actually have a full documentation website. We also have webinars dedicated on how to set up the full node, how to set up your own test net and stuff like that. So we have a lot of education material, including blueprint. So for example, the peer-to-peer energy trading use case, or the charging station, or the lighting use case, those are all blueprints that are available. So everyone can access that and then replicate the results for themselves. And like what was said before, is everything is open source. Even the use cases are open source.
Mm-hmm.
Great, and I assume those are on your website. What we should do is make sure there's a link from the wiki to your content, so as people can do that.
Yeah, and on top of that, we're also developing more blueprints all the time. We have a priority list with digital identity being our biggest blueprint that we're starting to focus on now. So some of them are already publicly available, and others will be available as they're completed and vetted for security and validity of the architectures. So they'll actually like lay out in a technical perspective how to implement an architecture, whether that be devices or code or modules or pieces are needed of the IOTA technology, and then how you can take other traditional technologies like some of us offer here and legacy systems and integrate those with the DLT aspect without necessarily needing to do everything on the DLT or transfer everything through the DLT.
Do you have a mechanism by which others can contribute to what you're doing? I mean, is this you know, is it up on GitHub, and what's your process for you know, for others joining and contributing to the code base?
Yeah, so it's entirely open. So everyone that wants to contribute can, of course, contribute. GitHub, of course, you can commit, you can communicate with our community on Discord. But now, actually, right now, we are developing a partnership with the Eclipse Foundation. We'll then take over the management of the governance, and this will then be very streamlined. That's the entire goal, to make this as easy as possible for people to engage with.
Gotcha. No, that makes sense. Other questions?
I think we have a bystander effect in it.
I think you've got people mute. It's great. It's a great platform by the look of it. I'm looking forward to playing with it a little and getting familiar with it.
So Wolf and Matthew, this is Jeff Gauss. I'm with the Oregon Blockchain Venture Studios. I'm intrigued by what you're talking about with the digital identity framework. That's your most pressing opportunity or work area. Can you elaborate on that a little bit more? And then I'll come back to why I'm asking about that.
Yeah, so I'm actually working with the Decentralized Identity Foundation. We're starting to talk to ID 2020, and we're looking into humanitarian use cases to kind of test out decentralized identity. But we're studying and we're researching, we're collaborating with other organizations that are interested in this, and we're kind of figuring out the best way to standardize digital identity frameworks. We're super prevalent in Europe already, and we're involved with the EU and the European Commission, and they have their EIDS platform. So we're taking that, and Estonia and AdHard, some of the other digital identity applications that have been built by governments and organizations around the world, and we're learning what they've already done and standardizing how to do similar processes. So whether that be incorporation of like e-apostilles to validate your credentials cross-border, doing certified records of authenticity, and then taking like your birth certificates and your stuff and putting it into a personal data wallet to where you control it and you can control who accesses it or can see that you have certain credentials or things of that nature. This is particularly useful in like refugee instances where people are fleeing and they need to take their identities or their credentials, or maybe the government's not responsive to validate those credentials. So then organizations like the UN, particularly UNHCR, will come through, they'll get them into the identity system, and then we're working to take that integration and enable it, and whether it be a smartphone or some sort of mobile storage solution, or figuring out what we can and cannot store on a DLT, because of course you don't want to put PII on an open ledger. But there might be instances where you can do it using encryption and MAM and stuff like that. So there's a lot of different pieces that come into play with that. But the biggest piece the biggest point is if you validate someone's identity and they can prove their existence, then it helps them use other resources in a smart city, and then gauge is, say, if there's someone in need or homeless, they're trying to find a job, they need welfare, food stamps, things like that. You can actually issue and track those in ways that is efficient for a city organization as well.
Okay, so do you have any, I mean, are there any serious commercial deployments or civic deployments of that are beyond proof of concept at this point?
Our biggest one is going to be Tangle ID, which is done through a community organization known as B Labs, and that's in conjunction with the Taiwanese government. So a lot of what they're doing is enabling their smart city stuff off of that digital identity platform, and it's still in, I would consider it a pilot phase, but we're getting the feedback from that and starting to scope how to like change the architecture and increase the security and fluidity of the system.
And we actually have several companies, at least two that I know of right now, that are trying to launch a IOTA-based product here. Because you can't mention them specifically here, but generally we're definitely going away from proof of concepts and towards test beds. And the City Exchange one is one of the best examples where we're now really getting integrated into a physical test bed where we can really do large-scale deployments of IOTA networks and then test the different business and the technology itself.
Mm-hmm.
This year we really focus.
By the way, there's some serious echo. I think it's best if everyone mutes when they're not speaking.
I'll go ahead and stop the sharing too.